This is We the Sales Engineers podcast, show 16. Vacations mess up my entire routine.
Welcome to We the SEs podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramsey Majaba. Ramsey hates going on vacation. He thinks it's a waste of time. Can someone please talk to him about this? Hope you enjoy the show.
Hello, SE Nation. I hope you guys are doing well, and happy Civic Holiday to all my fellow Canadians. I know different provinces have different name for the day, but I'm going to stick to Civic Holiday at this point. Thank you all for listening this past month. I mentioned to you guys at the start of the month that I would like to hit 600 downloads for the month of July. I was only able to get 450, but I think that's still good considering June was 298, so that's 152 more downloads. I appreciate that. It's still growing. More people are listening, so that's good. I'm going to set the same goal for August of 600 downloads. And you guys can help me reach more people by rating and reviewing the show on iTunes or wherever you listen to it. And if you think the content is useful, whether it's for the show or the blogs that I'm putting out, share them with your colleagues on LinkedIn. I'm posting everything on LinkedIn as well, so you can just easily share, or you can go to my website and share. So, bottom line, I really appreciate you guys listening. I'm happy I'm actually doing something that's helping other people. Otherwise, I'd just stop doing this. So, thank you guys. Today's guest is Steven Shaffer. He owns his own recruiting company called GRN Beachwood. And this conversation was awesome. He was full of tips for SEs. He's not an SE, but he's worked with hiring managers and SE managers for such a long time that he can actually provide feedback of what the managers are looking for in an interview as well as in real life. Because if a SE wants to demo something in an interview, one would hope that it will be reflected into real life. So lots of tips there, and they were useful. And there was a lot of books he talked about, a lot of links he talked about. So they will be available on the show notes, which is at wethesalesengineers.com/show16. And now let's get to this conversation with Steven. Welcome to the show.
I appreciate you for having me, Ramsey.
No, I appreciate you for spending the time with me, and hopefully we can help a few people today.
Awesome.
So I start the same way with almost every guest that I have, and that is by you introducing yourself, who you are, and what you do.
So, Steven Shaffer. I have an executive recruiting company, focuses in the IT software space, in big data, analytics, BI, data integration, kind of all around that area, and focus on pre-sales, sales, and a little bit of the professional services talent.
So by pre-sales, you mean sales engineers and sales and account managers?
No, pre-sales is really just pre-sales engineers. Sorry about that. We do the account managers as well. Most of what we focus on are pre-sales talents. About 70% of the placements we do.
May I ask, why is that the focus? Why is that your niche?
Well, I think the niche actually finds you. I don't know that I found it. Kind of started in the business in security. Somehow I ended up in mobile, and a large part of mobile was integration, and then integration kind of found me. And next thing you know, it's all about the pre-sales engineers. So the jobs just kept finding me there, and all of a sudden I ended up in the space. It really was just, I kept getting jobs in pre-sales. And the more I got into it, the more fun it was. And the more I found out that the companies are looking for this talent, and they're really unicorns out there. So there's something pretty special about these folks being able to connect the technical to the business. And once you start doing it, you kind of figure it out. It's like, wow, this is fun.
So I like being called unicorns, by the way.
Well, you guys are. It's not. It's very rare when you find folks that connect the technical to the business outcome. and actually be able to present and take the customers on that journey, and not just be the SME, but really be able to help close deals. And I think the pre-sales engineers are really the ringmasters of the sales process. So they kind of guide the customer through that process, and that takes a talent, which is certainly developed.
So I'm gonna change the name of my website to We the Unicorns instead of We the SEs.
There you go.
Yeah.
I like.
We are unicorns. All right, awesome. So why is it that how when you get requisition from a company, I'm assuming. Okay, first off, let me start with this. How does the process work from your end?
So typically, we'll talk to a company, and they'll have a problem with finding. We'll call it the unicorns, and we'll take a job order and we give them a scorecard. And what we look at the scorecard is with, if you look at a job description, there's usually a laundry list of technologies that they're looking for, but there's usually only 2 or 3 that are actually critical. So we kind of negotiate with them to understand what is it that they really want, what's the technical background they want. I understand the soft skills because everyone wants the same soft skills, but what's the technical background that will pass the technical screen? So once we work with the company on that, then we'll first go into the database, look at folks that have that technical background and also been in pre-sales, and then reach out to those folks. Once we've identified them, we'll look at how the candidate will actually fill out the scorecard as to how their technical background fits and also how their pre-sales background fits, and then we submit them to the company. And that's one of the ways which we'll do that. Another way is kind of reverse engineering the process, where we have candidates that are qualified for the jobs that are out there. They're committed to making the moves from their organization for the right reasons. Could be the culture of the company, could be stability, lack of advancement opportunities. And then with them, we're able to actually take them to market and help them with their next opportunity through a marketing program we developed. So it works one of a couple ways.
How long does it take usually for a company from when they open their acquisition internally, I guess, before they reach out to you? So do they try to open it up internally and recruit somebody themselves, and if they can't, then they reach out to you?
Everyone's different, and it's also what's the cost to hire. So the cost to hire is how long is it going to be for that job rec to be open? Do they need it now, or is there an urgency or not? It's one of the key questions you use when you talk to companies. Is there a sense of urgency? Because if there's not, the companies will typically go through a lot of hires, or a lot of candidates, but not hired folks, and the candidates are kind of wondering what's going on in the process because there's no sense of urgency. So I have companies that strictly use recruiters on pre-sales or other types of assignments. I have other ones that they're not allowed to use it until HR goes through, that 60, 90-day period, and then they can use an outside resource. So they're all different, but everything is about the sense of urgency. That's really what kills deals if the company doesn't have it.
Yeah.
Exactly. For your candidates or the SCs which are out there, it's one of the questions to ask. Consequence if you don't get this position hired within the next 30 days. And if there's no consequence, you're probably going to have a very long interview process.
Yeah, from my experience, or from when I talk to other SEs, it's usually is a long interview process.
Or longer.
Yeah, no, I understand. So generally speaking, how long would it take for you to find a candidate and get one hired for a company from when they reach out to you?
So there's really 2 answers for that. Let's talk to the hiring process. Most hiring processes run anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. If they have their act together, usually it's within a 4 to 6 week period. That from that initial interview, either with HR or the hiring manager, to the deal closing. How long does it take to actually conduct a search? They're all kind of different. I have some searches that we're able to find folks within 2 weeks, get them presented, and boom, they go. Other searches may take 2 to 3 months. It just depends what they're looking for, how much of a unicorn that is, and also the location requirements. Because we're in a great economy where people are gainfully employed, and if you're going to find someone for them, you have to have a very good value proposition to move them from their one job to the other, and they have to have a real need. So this is certainly a candidate-driven market in one sense, is that the companies will wait till they get the right person, and if they have the right person, the candidates are able to get a pretty good salary. On the other hand, companies typically that we work with will not hire someone unless they cross every T and they dot every I. Does that make sense?
It does, and I want to come back to that. But generally speaking, how much is the salary range for an experienced SE, the unicorn that they're looking for?
So folks that are out at least 10 to 15 years are going to be at a minimum of about 190 to about 250,000 as non-target earnings. Base is probably going to be somewhere from about 140, which is a very low end, to about 180. And I'm talking about 85% of the population. And there's exceptions to the rule where we do have folks going 190, 200 base for very highly niche type of roles, and 270 is an OTE. So those are out there too for senior folks.
So I'm looking at this. Basically, it would mean that at a minimum, to find and hire a new SE would take around 8 weeks.
Could take 8 weeks, could take longer.
Yeah, so at a minimum, that's if HR is not involved, and you find someone within, like, right as you start. You find a candidate for the company right as you start. And this brings me to my question, because we had talked a little bit before this call, you and I, and you mentioned that most of the companies that you work for are looking for sales engineers with experience.
Correct.
Why? And it sounds like the sales engineer, if it's a mediocre run-of-the-mill engineer, he gets paid between 140 to 180 base. And
I'd say mediocre engineers. No, there may be some. Yeah, I would say mediocre engineers, 140, 160 base, maybe even more.
Okay.
When we say mediocre,
average, not mediocre, like an average SE, like not top of the line, not bottom shelf.
Yeah, figure. It just depends upon the company and the market, but 140, 160, 165 is pretty reasonable out there. Just depends upon the company and the niche.
So my question is, if average SE, a good SE and average SE is 140 to 180, and it takes at a minimum 8 weeks to find, why don't they open it up to technical people who want to switch to becoming an SE?
Well, I think it's one of the problems in the industry. You have a severe lack of sales enablement training for the SEs, at which the companies do not offer training once they're onboarded in order to help them grow. I think it's probably the biggest challenge most organizations have, is once they hire them, they don't get trained, they don't get feedback. The SEs don't really grow, and I think that's one of the issues that most companies have, which is you hire them, but you don't do anything with them to develop them, or it's very little. So your candidate pool, which you're going to hire, if you don't have programs in order to develop the SEs, you better hire people that have those skills.
But wouldn't that mean that the previous company he was working at didn't train him either, and now he's just bringing over the same baggage?
I'll let you answer that question.
Okay. So why do you think that is? Why do you think companies don't do training?
Well, it's not all companies. There are companies that do training, but you're investing in people with that. If you're in a startup organization, which is pretty much the world I live in, they're hiring people at a pretty substantial pace, and they need them to come in to be able to solve a problem for them tomorrow. They'll develop their technical knowledge because that's book-wise, that's learning-wise, that's playing with the product. And most SEs growing up have that intellectual curiosity. So they're going to learn that. But these startups, which are getting a ton of money, they're running in about 100 different directions. So training is probably not necessarily at the top of that direction. It's got to be more established companies that have their sales enablement program built out, that have a formal, 60, 90-day period of training. And then once they're in there, that there's reoccurring reinforcement. You need reinforcement from the account executives, etc., to be able to go in and provide feedback in order to help them grow. Now, if you just look at your career, other folks that you've interviewed, how often do they get feedback in order to grow within the organizations they're in? You would know better than I do.
Yeah, we don't. I think it's the nature of being sales engineers that you end up working remotely to the rest of the organization.
Sure.
So, and honest from my experience, I don't really trust the account manager's feedback. Like, other than if I did something terribly wrong, I don't really trust that he would give me enough feedback for me to grow in a way that's better than what I have today. Right? I don't know if I'm making sense, but I'll try.
I think you kind of nailed it, which is, there is no, companies typically don't have a good formal process. And that there is training which is out there. One of the bedrock books that, if you're in pre-sales, if you haven't read, you need to read. You need to probably read it once a year. Is called Demo to Win. That takes you through the demo process, which is what you get hired for. It's not necessarily what's going to win you deals per se, because it's all a part of the methodology of the sales methodology that you're going to have. It's going to be a part of it, but if you want to get a job, you need to know how to present and demo. Those are the critical pieces. So Demo to Win is a book that everyone should have. Have you read that?
I have not. I've heard about it, and it's next on my reading list.
Yeah,
and now that you call me out on it, it really has to be next on my reading list.
Yeah, it's a very good book that I think anyone that's an SC should be reading. The other is Mastering the Complex Sales by Jeff Thal. And, it takes you through the other part, which is the sales methodology. He's got a very good book. Another book, which is the Challenger Sales Model, is certainly used by a lot of companies out there. If you're an SC and you want to be able to not just get jobs, but be able to really propel yourself in the career, you need to have those type of resources. You're following some type of methodology, even Sandler training or any of the other training programs. So if you're an SC or you are an engineer, you want to go into become an SC, that's where I would suggest they start looking.
So Demo to Win, Managing a Complex Sale, and the Challenger Sales Methodology.
Right. And there's a book called The Challenger Sale, and there's a few add-on books. They all deal with software sales.
Yeah, I've never heard of Managing a Complex Sale. I've heard of Challenger Sales.
All right.
Okay, good. I guess I'll add them to my to read list, the never-ending to read list.
It is never-ending.
It's a good thing. Keeps it interesting, I think. All right, so companies don't want to hire new SEs or new to the SE role because they don't have time to training, at least in your environment of startups.
Yeah, I only have one company, I think, that ever said, okay, let's forget the sales acumen. We'll train them on that. But because they have 3 technical interviews to get in the door, if we get them with the technical interviews, then we'll train them on the soft skills side. And there are some companies that will do that, but that's really the exception, not the rule. Or for companies that don't have the budget to hire the senior folks, those are the ones that are willing to bring them in to quote unquote train them.
So have you been able to compare the two methods, like the companies that hire brand new SEs versus the ones that hire, I guess, experienced SEs? Is there like a satisfaction rate that you can compare, or once they're hired, you don't really talk much with them at that point?
I don't know if it's a satisfaction rate. I think folks are looking to hire one don't have the budget to hire an SE with coming with the soft skills already, the sales methodology, etc. So it's more about when you're going to hire folks, what is your compensation structure? What can you afford to pay? Than it is actually a satisfaction rate.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. All right. So, all right. Let's talk about experienced SEs because that's most of the SEs that are getting jobs at this point. We'll try to help the other SEs in other podcasts.
Sure.
So, what's the interview process like in most of the companies that you see, and how should people prepare for that?
So there's really three questions that they need to think through. First question is, why are you looking to make a move? And that answer should revolve around either there's a lack of challenge, lack of advancement, stability, compensation, location. You need to have reasons why you're looking to make a move. If it's strictly about money, it really is turned off by most companies. Not to say you're not going to get a bump in your rate and your compensation, but they want to know that you've given this thought and there's a strategic reason why you're looking to make a move. Second is, why are you interested in us? So they want to know you've gone on the website, you've downloaded the white papers. If they have a product to download it, play with it. They want to know you're able to articulate why you think this would be a good career move for you. And the third reason is, what are your accomplishments? So in pre-sales, you should have mapped out a couple deals that you've been involved with from the initial technical discovery call. What are the insights from the initial technical discovery call, or not the technical discovery, actually, yes, the technical discovery call, that help you understand why what the issue the customer has, not just the technical, but really the business issue, and how that helped you lead the customer on the journey. And as you're doing that, when you had the leader of the opposition in the company, how'd you deal with them? Did you use empathy? Did you use logic? How did you bring them along with you? How do you prepare for a POC? How do you prepare for a demo? And in the end, why did the customer buy? Was it because of, why did they close the deal? And what was your impact on the deal? So mapping out at least 2 or 3 of those will help you be able to go through certainly the interview process, but those are the questions that they want to know pretty much in every conversation. Even if they don't ask you the questions, they want you to know. So think about, what are the 3 reasons a company should hire you? What are your top 3 accomplishments or achievements? What problems have you solved for companies that you've worked for? Those are the things that you want to think about, because those are the answers that they're going to want to have through the interview process. Make sense?
It does. So basically, using an example as the customer was going to buy anyways is not a good answer.
Well, if that's what you said to your manager, what would they say? Well, what do you think your manager would say to that?
Oh, I didn't do a good job. Well, he probably wouldn't say anything. He'd probably just ignore me and scratch me off the list.
There you go. So really, it's about, are you able to connect the technical to the business outcome? Every company I talk to wants to know you can do that. If you think they bought the solution strictly for technical reasons, then most of the companies which are out there that are looking for pre-sales engineers for a solution sale will pass on you.
So you basically have to describe what problem you solved for the customer.
Correct.
And how, in the end, how much money did you save them?
Well, it's how much you're saving the customer. What's the opportunity that they're going to have? It's both sides. It's both, what did you save, and also what are they now able to do that they weren't able to do? What can they offer the market that the market wants and needs that they weren't able to do without you, that they can now do?
All right. Sounds good. So how do you find these candidates?
That's a really good question. Everywhere. So I would say LinkedIn is certainly an area where folks are at. social media, whether it be Facebook, etc., areas that you may or may not connect with them on, but you're looking to understand what their background is. The last thing you want to do is find folks, go through the interview process, then the company does a background check, and they find you made inappropriate remarks on Facebook or Twitter, what have you. So find them there. Referrals are huge. So you're really, anyone you connect with can connect you with somebody else, and it's just asking people for help, because you're really able to impact people's lives in a way that most other people can't, because you're able to connect them to opportunities that perhaps can help propel them in their career, can help not just compensation for them, but for their family and what they can do. It's pretty neat. It's pretty neat when you take someone from a situation and they were heads down, focus on what they're doing, and all of a sudden, they look out, they see there's this career opportunity, and look at what it can help them do, not just for themselves, but their family, and how they're able to make an impact. It's really cool being able to watch people actually transition to something new and watch their lives change.
I wanna put out a note here that what you're saying here as part of your job, like the help that you're providing people, is pretty much what an SE should be feeling about his product when he's working with his customers. Like you are doing them, you are working with them to help them, which is pretty much like, I would assume. Were you ever an SE yourself?
No, I didn't come from this world at all.
Okay. It sounds like it, but okay.
When you work with them, you have to live, you have to eat, sleep with these folks, esoterically, but yes, you learn what their world is.
Well, hopefully some SEs will learn from you, from listening to you talk right now, because that's like the last minute of you talking is pretty much what every SE should be aspiring to. I know it sounds lovey-dovey, but I think that's the way it should be. Anyways, thank you for letting me rant. You said you find everybody, people on Facebook or Twitter. Or is that after you find them on LinkedIn, you research them on Facebook, or do you just you find them initially on Facebook?
So there's a lot of tools which are out there. LinkedIn is certainly the area that everyone's in, but what LinkedIn is today, what LinkedIn will be in the next 3 years, and what the market will be in the next 3 years, I think will change. I think what you see on LinkedIn, it's a great place to put data, but there's other tools which are out there today that allow you to leverage not only LinkedIn, but also what's on social media that people have written papers about, etc., that really we're able to start taking advantage of the full network, the internet, rather than strictly LinkedIn itself. So, yeah, I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, but there's other tools I use in order to find folks as well. It's not just the only one, and my guess in the next 3 years to 5 years, unless LinkedIn changes with the market and becomes a little bit more open, you'll probably have other competitors that are able to take LinkedIn and use it as one piece of a larger puzzle.
So is that tools that candidates are using, or is that tool specific to recruiters that are using?
I think it's not only recruiters, but I think sales organizations are going to be using those tools as well in order to learn more about their prospects. I think recruiters, you think of it because we're finding talent, but quite frankly, we're looking for the same people that sales folks are looking for, and businesses are looking for, contacts within organizations. So it's just it's a data-driven society, certainly.
So from a candidate's perspective, is there another tool that they should be using other than LinkedIn, or is LinkedIn the go-to at this point?
I think the go-to for any candidate should be their network. If they haven't been managing and building their network, and within LinkedIn, be able to have folks which can hire them for their next job, then they're not managing their career the right way. Your number one way in order to get a job is through your network, which you've been building. Although if you are in a job, you may not want to use your network if you're currently working and you don't want anyone to know. But if it's okay for folks to know, you should be leveraging your network first. LinkedIn would be second. And if you're going to be on LinkedIn, you should be involved in groups and probably pick 1, 2, or 3 groups. Don't just be a member of it, but participate in it. Write articles in it, respond to articles, become a thought leader, and post it in there. But make sure that when you join those groups, it's not 50 people that are in it. There should be 1,000 people, if not more, that are in those groups, so you can get noticed. And you don't do it when you're starting to look for a job. You start doing it when you're not looking for a job.
So basically, everybody should start now.
Pretty much. It's always a good time to start.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's never a bad time to start. So the number one way is to get a job is through your network. And you're not talking about LinkedIn. You're talking about actively networking with people and
Sure.
talking to them.
Absolutely. So one of the things that happens is a lot of the hiring managers are going to look when you go through the interview process. They're going to look and see if you're connected to folks on LinkedIn and if you've been managing your network. Because if you're an SC, they want you building your network. And if you've got 150 or 200 connections or 50 connections, I've seen people with 3 connections on it. It creates less value for the company because they're thinking, well, you're just not managing your network and you're not taking your professional network seriously. So you should have at a minimum of 500 connections, because after you're at 500, nobody knows how many connections you have.
Well, there is a way. If you ever write an article, you can see how many followers, people can see how many followers you have. And that's the number of connections, basically.
Well, I'll put it a different way. Once you have 500, that seems to be the threshold. People say, oh, we can check the box.
Yeah.
And awesome, right?
That was going to be my next question. What's the minimum number? So I guess I have some work to do because I only have 420.
Shame on you, Ramsey.
I'm sorry.
You're an internet radio host, and you don't have 500 connections. I don't know about you.
I'm sorry. I'll work harder on it, Steven. You're putting me on the spot today. I like this.
Well, I'm very disappointed in you, but we can talk about that another time.
Yeah, you can scold me after.
There you go.
All right. So I have groups on LinkedIn, and connect to as many people as possible.
It's not connecting to many people as possible, because LinkedIn is not about being connected to thousands of people. It's about connecting to the people that are in your network, or people that can help you find your next job. Or if you connect to a recruiter, it will get you closer to other folks out there that may be looking for your skill sets. But don't connect to a recruiter for the sake of a recruiter. Are they actually in your field? They want to be able to help you. So it's not just about connecting to a ton of people, but it's the people that can help you manage your career, or strategically, within companies that you work with, being connected with those folks. So when people look to do business with you and say, oh, I see you're connected with, John Smith over at Cisco, what have you.
So I connected with you. I'm not exactly in your field. Why did you accept my invites? Why would people accept other people's invites?
Well, I'm going to have different motivations. So I looked at you and you're in the pre-sale space. So that's an area where I spend a lot of time. I've got a pre-sales group. So whether you're someone I can help with the next job, you may do pre-sales, but I really don't work in your space. But if you end up connecting with me, you see that I have a group, you join that group, I think it provides more value for that group, where other folks can, not just me, but other folks will be able to find you there. And I think the more value you have within that group that I have, where it's all pre-sales folks, whether it be recruiters or hiring managers looking for talent, that can become a destination. So I did look at your profile, and I definitely went through the thought process. Is this a good connection? Is this not? Because I think we only had one mutual connection. But you were in pre-sales, and you seem to have stability in your career, and I thought it was worthwhile. You weren't a job hopper.
I think so. Generally speaking, when I connect with people, I put a note in there like, "Hey, I'm an SE out of here. I want to connect with you," something like that.
That helps. It's not just that. Yeah, because then that means you put some thought into it.
Okay. So tip of the day: put a note. It doesn't have to be crazy. Just put a note in when you're connecting with, asking for a connection.
I agree.
All right. So, and like I'm trying to segue into the next topic, but the way you wrote it, and hope you don't mind me reading this. Why most resumes are terrible and what to do about it. I couldn't segue any better. So, why are most resumes terrible?
Because if you took a job description and you put the job description into somebody's resume, it talks about the facts about what you've done. So I've worked with A, B, and C technology. I've been involved in POCs. I've worked with enterprise customers, responsible for demos. You know, all the stuff that before I even talk to you, if I know you've been in sales engineering, I know you've already done that. So if I know you've done that, there's no reason for me to look at your resume and see that that's, you know, what you've done. So there's no value to me. What I want to know is what's been the impact of you performing POCs? What have been your accomplishments? What kind of deals have you closed? What are the technologies that you've utilized on deals with either what's the name of the company or what's the vertical that you've been in that you've closed the deals in? You know, tell me about deals you've worked on and what your impact has been or what your accomplishments have been. If you've done sales enablement, what's been the accomplishments with it? How has the team changed? If you're a hiring manager, you know, don't tell me you did a lot of hiring. I want to know how, you know, have you promoted folks within the team? If you've gone from 4 folks on the team over 4 years to 60 folks on the team, that's great. Have they closed deals? You know, what's been the impact of what the hiring is on the sales process? So the 2 things which you have to include is what's been the impact, what are your accomplishments? So if you look at a resume and it's a fact, ask yourself the question, what was the impact of that fact or what was the accomplishment? So technologies, okay, you're going to list your technical background, that's fine. But tell me about how you've made an impact or what your accomplishments have been. And most resumes do not articulate that. So when companies look at your resumes and they see that there's facts on your resumes, it doesn't tell them what you're going to perform at their organization. But when you put down your accomplishments, I now know what you did with your resume. And in my head, I know what you're going to be able to do for my company. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm going to try to give an example and tell me if I'm on the right track. So instead of saying ran discovery calls, you can say something to the effect, through discovery calls, I was able to discover hidden pains of specific customers, which we were able to then develop into opportunities and close at a later date.
Right.
Is that what you're talking about?
So I think it's kind of like that, but you're going to talk about, you know, one of the conversations may be that you've closed up to 10 deals, $5 million over the last year. You were in President's Club, you know, ... Another thing, you'll talk about specific deals that you closed. So I have an idea of what's the technology you're working on, what are the verticals that you worked on, etc. You want to keep it in bullet points because you know, hiring managers can be looking at a lot of resumes. They need to be able to look at it and very quickly be able to get an idea of what type of deals have you worked on, what's the value of the deals, what's the vertical you've been in, so that they can get a good perspective in about 20 seconds as to what type of deals you've worked on and how you've made an impact.
So how long should a resume be?
You know, pre-sales engineers should really focus on what you've done the last 10 years. And within the last 10 years, you know, your resume should probably be a couple pages, maybe 2.5 pages. But if you're going to put a 5-page resume together, you know, for some hiring managers, they're going to make it an automatic out because you need to be able to articulate value propositions. You don't do that in 5 pages. So they're also looking at the resume. Are you able to articulate your value prop?
Okay. So my resume is 2 pages, and I was taught to never exceed 2 pages, which meant whenever I do something new, I just delete something old off of it.
Well, the question is, the stuff that you did more than 10 years ago, is that going to help you get your next job?
Nope. Not for me, at least.
Right. So it's what you've done in the last, decade that's going to really apply. So putting down the name of the company, years you were there, what your position was or positions were, that's great. You don't have to put any more detail than that unless you feel it'll help you get the next job. If it's a couple pages, it's fine. If you go to 3 pages, that's great. But you better have a really good reason you're going to go to 4 pages.
All right. And is there a difference between chronological versus functional?
Yeah, I think chronological is good because that way it doesn't look like you're hiding anything.
Okay.
And it's also, when you look at the resume, what do other people actually do on their resume? Is it a format that's easy for the hiring manager to look at and make a decision with? Because you're really targeting the resume for your audience. It's not for you, it's for the audience. You're making it as easy as you can for them to go through.
And is LinkedIn kind of will take the same format as the resume?
Reasonably, yeah. I mean, whatever you have on your resume, for the most part, you want to put on LinkedIn. You just want to make sure you have the keywords which they're looking for. So if you look at a job description, you see the technologies that are important to that company, you better make sure that those technologies are on LinkedIn and also on your resume, because that's what they're looking for. And if you're a pre-sales engineer and your perspective is, well, I'm a pre-sales engineer, I don't have to put my technologies down there, some of the larger companies may look at that and be okay, but the folks in the whether it be the pre-IPO or even the companies of IPO that are fast growth companies, they want to know what your technical background is. You're not a salesperson, you're a sales engineer. You need to include your technical background.
That makes sense. Do a lot of people remove their technical abilities off of their resume?
Probably about, I'd say somewhere 15 to 20%, about 1 out of every 5 or so. I'll see it and it's like, well, you need to add it back. So you have a conversation, because I know if they don't add it back, the resume won't go anywhere.
So how for that, why do you even give them a chance from the get-go to have a conversation with you?
Well, why not? It's, people are not professional interviewers. They don't do this every day. Most resumes I look at, they suck. It's not the person that sucks, it's the resume that sucks because they never learned how. So, part of when you work with a candidate, you want to be able to challenge them and see how they react. Do they have a fixed mindset? Do they have a growth mindset? Because when you work with a candidate, you really get married to that candidate for that period of time that you work with them in the company. And that they need to have a growth mindset. They need to be willing to they need to be able to be challenged and watch how they respond. Because in an interview process, which is not easy, if they can't be challenged, they're probably not going to get that role. So, it's just people, you can't look at people as being stupid, because they're not. They just haven't had experience going through these interview processes before. I haven't met anyone that's stupid in this industry. They're all very smart. Usually, it's just a lack of clarity or understanding of how to actually put it together or what the interview process is. You provide them with the framework for how the questions they need to start thinking about how they're going to answer. You never give them the answers, but you ask them the questions, you challenge and coach them. It's amazing how people are able to perform.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, I don't know that many stupid SEs out there. They generally don't last very long.
No.
Yeah. All right, so part of the interview, I just talked to a gentleman today who's brand new to the SE world, but he has an interview and he made it all the way to his final interview, which is a demo.
Right.
Right. So if someone's moving into a new company, is it a common request from the company to make them demo a product they've never seen before?
Yes.
Okay.
Very much so. I haven't had anyone go through a process where they haven't had to demo a product. It either is something which they've done on their own, their own company, where they just want to see what the presentation style is at their best, or learning the company's technology. Because one of the reasons they want you to learn the technology is they want to know how quickly you're able to get up to speed on the product. So when you do join them, they have a good indication of where your gaps are and how to help you get up to speed quickly.
Okay. And is there any other reason, like, for doing demos and presentations during an interview?
Oh, well, they want to see how you present. This is where candidates either get hired or they go away. So I've seen some companies where it's 1 out of every 20 people that go through the demo and get hired. I've seen others that's 1 out of every 10, just depending upon how thorough the process is. I have others that I see it's 1 out of every 2. But this is the place that most SEs go in, they prepare, and then they don't get the jobs because they don't present. They've never been trained on it, or they may have done some training years ago, but they've never gotten feedback, and they have no idea how to do it. And this is the part of the process is when I work with the SCs, I start to see, okay, so this is where candidates are failing. So let me go and one of the hiring managers said, if they can just manage their time, if you just sit with them, you talk with them, and just put a stopwatch to it so they know how to do time management. And when I did that, and I remember the first person I did that with is I couldn't believe it wasn't just the time issues, but they really didn't know how to take the customer on a story. They didn't know how to create tension with the customer in the beginning, or constructive tension, or using the rule of 3. It was just kind of was all over the place. And what it really helped me understand is they do not get taught how to do this. These people are putting together presentations based upon, what they think, not through standards of presentations. Now, how do you close the sale? Don't try and point and click your way through the demo portion of it. Don't try and show every feature. What is the customer's core challenges and the issues you're trying to solve? Are you relating that back to the customer? So there's a methodology with regard to the presentations that the SC really needs to understand. So through the process, whether they get the job or not through me, I'm going to help them with that process, because I even bring in an outside source to walk them through what the best practices are. Again, it's not giving them the answers to it, but helping them understand how do you structure the presentation, how do you structure the demo. Those are what's very important.
Could you run everybody by the rule of 3 for those who don't know what it is?
Sure. When you're doing the rule of 3, it's called the power 3. There's 3 main points which you have to articulate to the customer, and that you want to get them to think about throughout the presentation. If you do more than 3 parts, people are going to forget what are the 3 core issues that they have, and then you have to think through. If you start with a common theme, you go into the rule of 3. You have to think, how is this going to affect, and how will you engage the different needs of the people with these 3 concepts? And at the end, you're going to close it with the rule of 3. Just go online and you either search the rule of 3 or power 3, and there is a ton of information on it. And this is what they look for out of the demos.
Okay, I'll look that up and put a link in the show notes. All right, so is the SE or the candidate SE supposed to assume what the pains are for the customer, or for the hiring manager at this point, and present those, or how does that work?
So either the company gives a scenario, or you're going to create a scenario, and within it, you'll have that from the initial technical discovery call. So what you have to do is be able to restate, here are the challenges which I understand that you have, and here's what the impact is if you don't actually do it. You have to create the FUD factor, the fear, uncertainty, doubt. What's the cost of lost opportunity? It's not about the ROI of the solution. You have to show why solving the problem matters. you also have to have an emotional impact to make sure that the customer sees themselves as a part of the story. And they have to be able to identify really with other companies that have gone down this path before. And if they don't change their behavior, here's what the outcome is. But it's creating a real, it's emotional connection which you have to have between the pain and the feeling that the customer has. Because if you can't create that element of drama there, then you can't show them, here's the new way. Here's the new way which you're going to be able to go either make money or you're going to be able to save money. It's about the solution, not the supplier. It's how the solution is going to impact you. Then in the end, it's about our solution and why it's the best. And you're going to basically lay out how you're able to deliver the solution, what the true value proposition is, and what they have to include in it are really 2 to 3 planned aha moments that have an insight or some type of surprise or some type of impact. And at the end, the magical question you're going to ask is, can you see yourself using this tool or this platform? And then you finish with some type of catalyzing action. It could be a POC, it's a workshop, whatever it is. But you have to connect back to what their pain is, whether it be the business pain or the technical pain, but connect it to the business in the end. And you're taking the customer on a journey, and it's a roller coaster at the end. You then create the constructive tension at the end. If you don't change, here's where the impact is. So it's the beginning, it's the end in order to help move the customer forward. A lot of dramas.
Yeah, no, that's very good. We're about to transition to the fire round because we're getting to the end of our hour, but I just want to do a quick tip. You mentioned, ask the question, can you see yourself using the product? If I may just provide one small tip, I like to ask, how can you see yourself using this product? And I feel that they end up selling it to themselves by discussing that amongst themselves.
So, I think you
Sorry?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm giving you feedback that I get because I get it from the hiring managers and the folks, and I've done some studying on it, but I haven't been in your deals.
Yeah, but it's exactly the same thing. It's what you just mentioned is pretty much a discovery process that we run through. So if anyone's listening, the last a few minutes is a discovery process. And then when you go switch into selling. All right, so let's move into the fire round before it's too late. So
Ramsey, let me just add one thing if I could.
Yeah, please.
They need to also incorporate tell, show, tell in that summary, in the process, which is tell, I understand, show, here's how we help, and then tell why you should care. That needs to be a part of the presentation process as well. And again, if you just take that, go to YouTube, whatever it is, you'll see a lot of data or a lot of information on it. So, I mean,
no, it's your podcast. You can interrupt all you want.
Can I say hello to my daughter?
Yes, please. You can go ahead. I doubt she'll be listening to this unless she's an SE. Is she an SE?
Not in this lifetime.
Yeah. Okay. So I doubt she'll be listening to it, but you can say whatever you want.
I'll say hello to Samantha and also hello to Abby, and they will never listen to the podcast. But I can at least say I said hello.
Yeah. I'll send you the link so you can forward it to them.
Yeah.
Good. All right. So I usually ask 4 questions, but you already answered one of them, which is book or resource that every SE should read. So I'm going to skip that. And I know you're not, you're more into recruiting SEs.
Kind of losing you here, Ramsey.
Oh. Is this better?
Ramsey, I cannot hear you, unfortunately.
So first question is, other than a notebook and a pen, is there another essential tool a sales engineer should be using?
Sure, it would be your ears and your questions.
Nice. All right, that was a quick answer. I like it. Do you have any tips or tricks for time management and task organization?
Well, I think what you have to do when you do the, you're talking about within the presentation?
Yeah, sure.
So when you have your first slide and you talk about what you show what you're going to be talking about, make sure on that slide that you show how many minutes you're going to be talking on each subject, so that the people, when they're looking, they already have a picture. Okay, for the first 5 minutes we're going to be here, next 5 is here, so that mentally they can process. They know when the end is. They're not thinking, is this ever going to end? You've already given them a path. That's important to put in your that first slide that you have in the presentation.
So
we have the.
Is that the agenda slide or?
Yeah.
Okay.
It should be on the agenda slide.
All right.
If you look at time management in general, you have to plan your time. So I know on my calendar I have blocks of time which are closed. So Outlook is closed. So the only thing I focus on is what I'm doing. And I think that's a good thing to be able. There's time when you respond via email and text, and there's times where you need to turn it off so you can focus on what you're doing.
It's interesting you say that, because most salespeople hate it when their sales engineers do that.
Well, you don't work for the salesperson. You have your own manager.
Yeah.
So, here's the times where I'm open. Here's the times where I'm closed. And you just need to, everything in life is about behavioral change. And you have to change other people's behavior, or you have to help them understand that they need to change their behavior in order to negotiate your relationship with them. Because if you're only going to go by their rules, your life and your ability to perform at their expectations really becomes limited.
So that's perfect. And that could also be the answer to the fourth question, which would have been, is there an advice you would give an SE that you feel they don't get from anybody else? And unless you have another piece of advice, well, pretty much all your podcast was pieces of advice. So,
yeah, it's really, there's a lot of really good books out there. I'm not talking about SCs, but there's one book called The Growth Mindset, which is really talks about why people succeed. There's another book called The Power of TED that helps you understand when you get involved in internal politics in organizations, or even at home, you kind of get caught in the drama. It helps you get out of it. And those types of books are going to help you not only at home, but also throughout your career. Those are very important. And then, find a mentor. Find people that have been there, done that. And, the key word is ask them for help. People don't want to be asked, will you do this for me? Will you do that for me? But when you ask people for help, it's incredibly powerful. And reach out to those folks and get professional development. Because if your company's not going to develop you, you're going to think you're doing great. Because if you go into a room and you have 100 SCs, you say, okay, who's in the top 10% of all the SCs out there? They're all going to raise their hand. But what they don't realize is they don't get feedback. And the only way to grow is with feedback. So find people that can provide you with honest feedback in order to help you grow.
Awesome. Steve, I like this podcast. It's full of wisdom. Not necessarily just from a recruitment perspective, but also for an SE. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ramsey. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And, I love your podcast. It's great. It's, I think the industry needs it.
Thank you. I think so too. All right. Awesome. Well, I'll catch up with you later and I'll send you the link to this podcast. Do you mind if I put your LinkedIn information on show notes?
Sure.
All right.
Go ahead.
Feel free to not accept someone's connection invite if they didn't write you a note.
Sounds like a plan, Ramsey. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
All right, guys, that was it. I hope you guys enjoyed this interview and at least learn one thing. I feel like if everybody learns one thing from anything that I do, that's good. I personally learned a lot, and I want to thank Steven for spending his time with me. All the books that Steven mentioned are on the show notes at wetheSalesEngineers.com/show16. Those are affiliated links with Amazon, so if you want to support the podcast, you can go through them and buy the books at no additional cost to you. Otherwise, just you can see the names there. Just copy that and put it on into Amazon and buy it directly. Same price, doesn't matter. Thank you guys for listening, and thanks to everybody for reaching out to me on LinkedIn, and especially those who send me notes that what I'm doing is actually helping them. I appreciate that. It drives me to keep going forward. So that's it for me. I'm done for today. This is Ramsey signing off.